This is how your brand story should be if you want to reach this kind of clientele. What's the purpose behind this brand and who are you trying to target? Our job is to kind of draw that connection and just figure out what's the brand story going to be about? What's the big picture here? What's the one main idea that we want to run with?
Monika is a branding expert and the founder of Moon Studio, where she helps entrepreneurs develop standout brands.
Honestly, social media has been like the backbone of the business.
What are the biggest mistakes that you see people make?
They make it too personal. They always think about, do I like this? What's your audience gonna like?
What are the things that puts a brand ahead of its field?
The little details. Do they have a website that is on point with their social media? Do they really put the effort into their own products? It's not just something that's been mass produced.
What would you tell like the girl that you once were?
Don't feel so much pressure. Being patient and not putting that pressure on yourself is really important, especially when you're trying to do something new.
Monika, thank you so much for being here today and welcome to How She Does It. Monika is a branding expert and the founder of Moon Studio, where she helps entrepreneurs develop standout brands. She's worked with luxury brands and holistic businesses, bringing a unique blend of creativity and strategy to each project. Monika's clients have been featured in CBS, CNN, and Houston Style magazine. While she loves creating stunning branding, what truly drives her is helping business owners tell their stories through powerful visual storytelling. An avid traveler, Monika has lived on 3 continents, which is crazy. She's now based in Paris and enjoys exploring the city's vibrant culture with her husband at her side. So I'm so excited to have you on today, Monika. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Monika and I actually go way back. We met over 10 years ago now, where we used to live Kitchener-Waterloo. And I think it's just crazy how life happens. And I've watched her on social media build this amazing, beautiful branding business. And so, Monika, tell me, where did the branding business start? How did you even start Moon Studio?
Well, that's a very good question because honestly, I had no idea that it was going to actually bloom into what it has become today. This business kind of happened while the pandemic started. Originally, I was an English teacher abroad in China. And when the pandemic hit, I was not anywhere where my house was, and I needed to find a way to make an income. So I was exploring and thinking what am I good at? What am I passionate about? And honestly, I've always been a very creative person. And I was like, how can I make this into a business? And I started teaching myself how to do graphic design. And that's something that I never explored before, but now I had all this free time. So I honestly sat down, took a bunch of courses, taught myself how to use the software. And initially, I actually started off as an illustrator, a car illustrator at that. It wasn't.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I always really loved cars. And I was just let me see how this is. And it was very unique and very niche. And I did that for a while. Then I was like, it's not very fulfilling. And, I started being on social media a lot. And I started seeing all these beautiful brands start happening. Because of the pandemic, everyone kind of had this same idea as me. It's I can't work. I need an income. What have I always been passionate about and what can I do to make an income? And they all started these businesses. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a really interesting idea. So then I started teaching myself about branding and kind of transitioned from being an illustrator into doing visual identities for brands. And then it just kind of bloomed from there, and I started posting my work on social media, and I started getting some traction and became Moon Studio.
That is amazing. So I didn't realize you're self-taught with all of the branding stuff.
Yes, and I continue to teach myself. I can never be satisfied. I learned something and then I'm I want to learn something more, and I always learn something new as much as I can. And even now I'm teaching myself how to do e-commerce websites just so that I can elevate my offerings. And I have a lot of businesses that I work with that do need websites. And at the moment, I offer service-based websites. But e-commerce is something that's been coming up quite often. And I'm like, okay, well, time to learn something new.
Wow, that's amazing. And I feel like in entrepreneurship, it's so important to have that mentality of you're always a student. I really believe that. And now today it's so easy. You don't have to always have a degree in something in order to be a professional in it and have that be your job. So walk me through, you're in the pandemic and you're starting this business. How do you even go about getting your first client?
Well, that was something that I was very worried about because like
Yeah.
this is all new to me. I'm not someone that usually spends a lot of time on the computer or on social media. And I was just doing some research, and it's amazing what you can find on the internet these days. Like, you have so much information, and I was finding different platforms where freelancers can actually post their work or get work or just find open jobs. And I started on a platform called Upwork.
Oh.
And do you know this one?
Yeah, I hire people from it all the time.
Okay, so you see, that's exactly where I found my first clients, and I was just like, well, this is okay, but honestly, like it has this thing about it where you hire people for very cheap, and it's like where a lot of
Mhm.
people go to start off because you don't have very much experience. So you're trying to build that confidence, try to gain some, testimonials, some proof that you're actually
Yeah.
doing what you're doing. So honestly, I think it's a great stepping stone, and I've also recommended some people to it that are just starting their design careers too, because I've actually mentored some people. And I think that it's a great way to just start off so you can gain some confidence, gain some practice, have some more social proof. And then honestly, social media has been like the backbone of the business, like posting my work and then eventually having a website to also have a portfolio has helped a lot. But just finding those freelancing platforms has been the starting point to just gain that confidence.
Wow, that's great. And so you started on Upwork, and then from there, did it spiral with its like referrals and with social media? Are people naturally finding you there, or do you feel like you have to have a huge following on social media in order to earn a full-time income? What does that look like?
Well, I think it's different for everybody. So, for the most part, a lot of my clientele actually does come from social media. And even when I was just starting off with just like 1,000 followers, I was getting a lot of inquiries as is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So then, but it was during like the height of the pandemic where a lot of people were coming out with these new businesses. And I feel like since the pandemic has stopped, obviously it has slowed down quite a bit. I think people are now going back to like kind of 9 to 5 jobs, but they still come in regularly, and like I'm already booked until next year. I have only one more project opening for the rest of this year. And
Wow.
I'm grateful for that, but I know a lot of freelancers that doesn't happen to them. But of course, word of mouth also is something big. I have one client that she's referred me to so many people, and I've had the pleasure of working with people that she's referred me to or referred them to me. So, yeah, it's just a mixture of both. But I have to say that social media has been like the main part of it.
That's so amazing. And I find too that there's like two energies to social media when you're coming to try to make money and earn an income. So, from my experience, the influencer side of things, when you're waiting on brands to have to like reach out to work with you, versus when I've built the social BFF, I had people wanting to work with me like you, similar to your experience, and the number of followers I had did not matter at all. I remember making money with social BFF before I had that 1,000 follower mark on TikTok, which really surprised me and opened my mind up to, oh, whoa, you can make a full-time income and it doesn't matter the size of following that you have. Like the opportunity is out there. It's just about working on iterating your skills and, like I said, that mindset of constantly being a student. And so talk to me about like what does your day-to-day look like and how do you manage the business, learning, and constantly wanting to just grow and be better in a space that you still kind of are a little bit new in?
Yeah, so definitely this is something that obviously I still navigate through every day, and I'm trying to figure it out. But starting last year, I found finding a planner that works for you is best. And I found this goal setting planner. It's a quarterly planner to set your goals for the quarter. And integrating this into my routine and into my schedule has been like the absolute game changer for me.
Mhm.
Always keeping your mind on the bigger picture, but not too big that it doesn't seem like you can attain it. So
Yeah.
I think like taking bite-sized steps, like having a quarter that you can plan and have goals to, it's very good. And setting a certain routine that, you can actually have a start time, a stop time, make sure that you can still take care of yourself, which of course I think it doesn't matter how well planned you are, you still struggle with it.
Yeah.
But just having that kind of outline and like schedule and having it on paper, if you're a paper person, or digitally on a digital planner, it helps a lot. And again, I still struggle with it sometimes, even still today. But having a routine and having goals for yourself is a game changer.
I really agree. And a planner has been a game changer for me too. And especially like I use a full focus planner, and I love it so much. And I feel like just being able to, I need to write things out, writing out my to-dos for the day has made it so much more efficient. And I think too, do you work with anyone? Like, do you have anyone that you work with or like employees or anything right now?
Actually, I'm partnered with my husband.
Oh, right. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And we're kind of like accountability buddies. So it's
Mhm.
like, I'm really grateful for that because he's always on the same page as me as far as like personal life and business life goes. Like, we're always pretty good with scheduling and maintaining a perfect balance. It's like he can help hold me accountable and I can hold him accountable. So
Yeah.
I'm really grateful for that.
It just helps you because when you either as an entrepreneur or like a very, very small business with only a couple of people, I think that it's important sometimes, like we can get so caught up in the daily tasks and being like, okay, I have to do all of these tiny little things, but it's like, are we doing the things that are big that are going to move the needle, and making sure that we're prioritizing those big things? Because if not, like you can get so consumed with just the tiny minuscule daily tasks that aren't going to essentially feed the bottom line.
It's true. And I feel like that's where that quarterly goal planner comes in, because it's like you can always have that bigger picture and find the little steps that will actually get you to that bigger picture. And like you
Yeah.
don't even realize, you might be even missing a step when you think about the end goal. And these little things always tend to trickle in, and you have more on your to-do list as it goes on. But ultimately, if I feel like you end up where you envisioned yourself for that time period that you set, then I mean, life throws you curveballs all the time and you can't plan. And like,
So
I'm
true.
I'm very much a Virgo. Like, I'm like a perfectionist. I like to plan things. I like to know what's happening.
Mhm.
But in reality, it can't be like that. There's always going to
Yeah.
be something that you don't know is going to come at you.
Yeah, it's so true. And so like you travel a lot. You and your husband travel a lot. You've moved a couple times. And so how do you prioritize keeping that rhythm or that routine in different time zones, different countries, and different homes?
Yeah, that's quite a difficult one. Before we always move to another country, we always have to do our research into like what is the area that we're working in. Is it going to be accessible for, if we need to travel somewhere quickly with the metro? Is there a grocery store nearby? A gym? A gym is very important to us. We love working out in the morning and just starting our day with some movement, whether it be like a hardcore workout or even just a flow with yoga, just doing something in the morning, just to set the tone for the day. And just making sure everything that we need in our daily lives is near us. Wherever we travel to, it's a must. Like, we have like a list of things that we need in order to actually go there. So there's a lot of planning before we actually jump ship to another country. But having those like minimum standards is really important. And once we get to that new country, it makes that adjustment that much easier. And quite honestly, we move quite a lot. So like a time difference, there's no jet lag. Usually we're pretty good with realigning our times, but just making sure that we're flexible and not being too hard on ourselves. But just making sure that we actually do what we're going to make ourselves out to do. And like, that's where that accountability buddy comes in. Because
Yeah.
like, we actually like, we say we're going to do something, but then we never do it. But if you have someone like a partner or a husband like I do, who's beside you 24/7, like, it makes things a lot easier when you're on the same wavelength, the same mindset, and you can get things done the way that they're supposed to be done.
That's very true. And like I preach all the time. I think that discipline, like internal
That's the word
discipline.
I was looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important. And I think that you have to inherently like having your husband is so great, but like having it internally, like you both have to naturally have that to do it for
Yes.
each other, to be able to show up and actually be successful in what you want to do and be gritty in that. Like those problems are going to arise. And so you were a teacher before. What has been the biggest shift going from something that's like more considered a 9 to 5 or a typical job versus jumping into entrepreneurship?
There's quite a few things. Like one thing is actually having a schedule set for you and you just get up, go, you do what you're supposed to do. It's like almost like autopilot.
Yeah.
Um, that and also the fact that you don't even have to leave your house. Like the fact that you work from your home,
Yeah.
you have to bring yourself to work still, but like,
Yeah.
you still need to get ready, still make yourself feel like you're a person because I know that that's a slippery slope. It's like you don't need to get dressed, you don't need to do your hair or anything like that when you work from home. So I think that's also a big change is making sure that you still take care of yourself. Because when you have a job, like you're almost obligated. You have to be presentable. You have to show up for other people. But when you're at home, you only have to show up for yourself. And I know that a lot of people can struggle with that.
Yeah.
So I think that's also a really big difference. So having a set schedule and also showing up for yourself.
I agree. And how long do you feel like it took you to actually understand what your new schedule looks like? Because for me, when I was going from my corporate sales job into entrepreneurship, I actually kept the exact same schedule, got up at the same time, kept my 9 to 5 working hours. And I feel like that has created balance for me. Now, where I struggled was during the day, I was like, what am I doing? And so that's when I like started calendar blocking and the planner and all that kind of stuff to structure my days and my weeks. But how long did it take you to find a new rhythm going from teaching to starting this business?
I think it took quite a while because there was
Hmm.
also that learning curve where I didn't just start the business right after teaching. I had to
Right.
do quite a lot of learning. So before I even knew I had a business, it was more of just learning and figuring out what I was wanting to do with my life. But once I actually realized like I have a business here, I think like actually having a journal, like you said, like you have to start doing these things. Like I never really journaled before starting my business, and like that's something that I've incorporated into my daily life, and actually having a set routine. Like before, when I first started the business, we woke up at 5, went to the gym for between 5 to 7, and then we would have breakfast and then start our day. Like we had a very like set schedule. Since then, we've kind of become a little bit more relaxed, but still more or less the same idea is just waking up early. And I think also waking up early and getting the most out of your day also helps a lot. Never to sleep in because then it kind of just drags on and you kind of feel sluggish for the rest of the day. But starting your day
Hmm.
early and fitting a little bit more into your schedule, you feel a little bit more accomplished. And I just think that it does take a while, and
Hmm.
still it's not something that can be set in stone. But
Yeah.
I think just finding those little things that help you on your daily routine when you are self-employed, it's different for everybody. But once you find those little things, I think it will help find that more of a routine than not.
100%. I really agree. And I think that it takes time, and you also have to just be flexible in trying things and understanding not everything's going to work, not everything's going to feel good. And that is part of figuring out what does work and what doesn't. And I love that it seems like you guys really protect your mornings for more personal time. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. We're both morning people. So the morning
Hmm.
time is for us to just take, I know it doesn't sound like it, but take a slower morning, just, get out
Yeah.
of bed and then move the body, make sure that we eat well. We have a coffee, sometimes 2 coffees. And then when we're ready, then we get to work.
I love that. And so like working with your husband, how do you guys have different roles within the company and who's accomplishing what? Or are you both kind of doing the same things?
Well, initially it was me doing absolutely everything. And then he saw me and he's like, is this something that I can do? And while I was learning how to do graphic design, he started writing. And
Oh.
yeah, so he was also a teacher, and he always loved writing and he always wanted to pursue it. So he started off as a copywriter, and he saw that I was starting to get into brands, and he also found an interest in it. So he started learning about branding as well alongside me. And he started looking into brand strategy. And for me, I was doing visual identity, and we kind of just found what complemented each other to blossom into what we have now. So
Wow.
he does the brand strategy side of things, anything that's copywriting. And then I do everything that's visual identity driven. So it's kind of like the two-sided part that I
Yeah.
was taking care of all by myself, but then he kind of stepped in and helped me. And now he takes care of all the admin as well, which I'm very grateful for.
Yeah. It sounds very complimentary too. Like it works, it just fits really well together.
Yeah, I think so. And like it would not plan that way, to be honest
Mm-hmm.
with you. It kind of just like flowed into becoming what it is because we had no
Yeah.
idea that this is what it would be. And just like having that curiosity always and always wanting to learn something more and something new, it just kind of complemented each other, and the rest is history, I guess.
That's really sweet. And so both of you being like in the same industry, running this company, you've talked a lot about learning and growing and all of those things. So do you find yourself yearning to put yourself in spaces where you can grow, and what do those spaces look like? Are you reading? Are you going to conferences? What does that look like for you guys?
That's something that we've always wanted to kind of incorporate, is networking a little bit
Yeah.
more. And like honestly, we've kind of struggled with it because we travel so much, and just trying to
Yeah.
find that right community, that right kind of people that we can associate ourselves with. And like now that we are trying to find like a home base, it's becoming a lot easier. Especially being in Europe, we work with clients from all over the world, and quite a few of them actually are in Europe. So we're hoping to start connecting with clients in real life because everything is always virtual. So just finding the space and finding the time to actually start connecting and building our community in our new home in Europe.
Yeah. Actually, that makes sense too because you've traveled so much. So it's like, yeah, a lot of it would be virtual because if you're not having roots somewhere, it's just harder to get out in person. Like you're probably missing an event because you're not in the right city or the right country at that time. And so what resources do you go to like prior to settling down in Europe? Like where were you going to learn or connect or network?
Well, honestly, everything has just been online through social media. And like I have quite a few like groups on Instagram that are also fellow designers or branding specialists, and we always connect through there. But I always still feel like there's no real personal touch to it when you're just doing something virtual. So the fact that we're planning on starting to do networking events and going to conferences, this is something that we haven't done yet.
Yeah.
But we definitely want to start doing. We just need to make sure our schedules align, and like you said, just be in the right spot at the right time.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I made a promise to myself, and actually my mom prompted me to do this where when I was leaving corporate, like quarterly, going to something in person to make sure that you're still feeding that side of yourself and that networking portion. And I think I missed last quarter, to be honest. I'm like, I don't think I did something last quarter. But the point is like having the goal on the calendar, and like if you hit it like 3 out of 4 times in the year, you're putting yourself in those rooms, and having the flexibility for that to look different too. Like not having it be so cemented in, it has to look a certain way. It's more about achieving the goal and then being flexible in how you approach that and how you get that done. And I think even having conversations like this and making a connection like this, it's nicer in person. But when you live halfway across the world, it's like you kind of take what you can get in that sense.
Mhm.
So I love your approach on that. When you're thinking about like branding and what's so important, and you're meeting with clients and consulting with them on how to build their visual identity, what are the things that are top of mind that you're wanting clients to bring to the forefront in their brand in order to communicate their vision to their audience?
Ooh, that's a very good question. Honestly, it's different for every single person that we meet with. More or less, it's more of what's the big idea that you're wanting to run with? Is this going to be more of a personal brand, or is this going to be more of like its own entity and you're just the business owner? But mainly, it's like you're just like thinking about what's the purpose behind this brand and who are you trying to target. And our job is to kind of draw that connection and just figure out, what's the brand story going to be about, whether it be personal or its own entity as a brand, and just trying to bridge that gap where it's like, okay, this is how your brand story should be if you want to reach this kind of clientele. And also the visual identity goes hand in hand with that. So I will never work on a visual identity unless if there is a brand story or brand strategy first, because I feel that the visuals play a very big role, but they should always reflect what the bigger picture is, which is the brand strategy, and make sure that it does tell a cohesive and consistent story. And it just makes it that much easier for the business owner to carry it further, and also to hire other people like social media managers to make sure that they have that one big idea and have that brand story and make sure it's always consistent. And also that goes with the visual identity, because there's always color psychology that goes into it, and you don't want to choose the wrong color if you're trying to attract the right audience. So it's pretty complex and it's always different for every client, but the main thing would be just like, what's the big picture here? What's the one main idea that we want to run with?
That's actually so true. And I always say, like, I work with my clients one-on-one. So it's more creators that I'm working with, and they're building these personal brands. And I always say you have to start with your why. You have to start with why are you showing up? Why are you posting videos? Why do you have this persona online? Because if you don't start with that, everything else is lost. And so I'm wondering from a personal branding standpoint. So for me, personal branding is anything from your LinkedIn profile because you want to be a professional, or you're building a brand on social media because you want that to be your career. What are the biggest mistakes that you see people make?
I feel like maybe they make it too personal, because they always think about, like, do I like this? Is this something that I would do? Or the bigger picture is like, you need to talk about your audience and what's your audience gonna like? So obviously you have to make sure it reflects you and make sure that it's true to you. But ultimately, you can't just make it all about you. It's about who's also going to be viewing it, because you're not going to just watch your videos and that's it. Like, people have to be attracted to it. And that's one thing that I run into a lot with the clients that I work with, especially with the visual identity. They make it too personal on their personal preferences or personal choices. But it's like, we draw up their own personas or clientele target audience, and it's like, we need to make sure that this attracts this kind of person. Of course, you have to like it and approve it, but what we present to you ultimately is going to be best for your audience. And that's where we draw the branding side of things, to make sure that, it's a bigger picture. It's not just all about you.
Yeah, and that's actually such a good point, because I think that when you're building a personal brand, you can get very caught up in telling your story in your way. And I always say that there's a difference in like the language that people use when you use I language versus like you or we language, because it resonates with people differently. And that's the same premise that you're talking about in terms of like having your consumer be at the center of your brand so that you can communicate to them more effectively. And so talk to me about how somebody would build a successful customer profile so that they can target the right person.
Well, this is definitely something that I don't personally take care of, but I know a lot about it. But more or less, it's more of like the age range, because I mean, you can't really generalize, but in this topic, you're supposed to generalize.
Yeah.
What is their profession? What are their hobbies? Where do they usually hang out? So you know how to market them properly. What are their pain points, which is very important. It's like, why would they come to your business or your brand? And how would you help them solve their pain points? So that's the main criteria that we would look into when it comes to actually targeting somebody. But yeah, I think the pain points go a long way, because, I mean, people have great ideas all the time, but if you're not going to solve anyone's problem, then it's really unlikely that someone's going to choose you.
That's actually really true. It's unlikely that somebody's going to choose you. And so with the line of work that you're in, and you've worked with amazing clients, like we said at the beginning, they've been featured in CBS, CNN, magazines, all of that. How have you seen the impact that your branding has had on their business? Like, has that played out in real time where you've seen like, okay, we implemented like this whole branding package and that has done X, Y, or Z for their business?
Yeah, like I have one client in specific that I plan to do a case study on. She was someone that kind of blew up on TikTok, and she was like, I really want to make a product from this. I need to brand myself or the business and kind of go with it. And we first started off with just branding her. And then she came out with a product later on. And her product sells out like even before she's even launched it. She pre-sells it, it's
Really?
gone. And she's just done so well and skyrocketed. And she really says that it has a lot to do with the branding. And just it makes her be different from, her competition and the people that are in her industry. She has a specific look and feel, and people, when they see her business or her brand's name, they know what they're going to get. And that's essentially what you want to do with branding, is like you want to have some sort of identity that people can connect with and recognize. So that's something that we did with her, and she's since then has launched many more products that I've helped her with, and it just continues to grow. And she really says that it's a lot about the branding process that we've done.
Wow, that's really exciting. And I think that like what I see from that is that I think that when you're creative and you're in the space of like social media and all that kind of stuff, sometimes I think you can have the mindset that maybe you could do the branding yourself. And I personally feel like that's a huge mistake because one, you need other people. Like I feel like you always need to outsource to bring like experts in the field. Like if you're on social media posting videos, for example, like we're talking about TikTok, it's like you're really good at that type of marketing, like making videos go viral, all that kind of stuff. Branding, visual identity is something completely different. Even like color theory, I feel like is so specific and can make or break the message that you're trying to get across to your consumer.
Yeah, that is so true. And I see it all the time. And I can tell when someone has done it themselves or used
Yeah.
Canva or something like that. And like honestly, I think personally, that's fine. But then you need to come to a point where you're like, okay, this is only gotten me this far. But if you have bigger goals and bigger dreams, you ultimately have to reach out to an expert to see how can I reach my goals from what I have now and make sure that it is accurate as possible. And like you said, the color theory plays a huge role, and like having the wrong color can be a mistake. And that's where I said with like, people get too personal with their brand, and like just because they like that color doesn't mean that it's the right
Yeah.
color.
It's so true. And I think that, I don't know, just understanding, like, I am very humble in the sense of, like, I know what I'm good at and I know when it's time to hire someone. And
Mhm.
I think that as an entrepreneur, that's a really important thing to not have ego in that decision and understand when it's time to outsource that thing to get it done so that you can elevate to the next level. And so, for you, when you're working with clients, at what point do you feel like they're coming to you and being like, listen, it's time now for an expert to take over and they're ready for that next step? Is there like a certain threshold that you kind of see people come to you at, or what does that look like?
Honestly, it's different all the time. Sometimes it's a brand new business that they still even need direction into what exactly they're even doing still.
Yeah.
And even brands that have been existing for a long time and they just need a refresh. It's different for everybody, and I don't think any of them are right or wrong. It just depends on the business owner's perspective and where they're at. And also the investment. I think that also plays a huge role because, of course, when you outsource something or you need something professionally done, it is an investment. But it's an investment, it's not just a cost. So you have
Yeah.
to think about maybe, what is going to be the return of investment if I do get it done professionally. So it's like you need to think about the bigger picture. And I think a lot of business owners have a different perspective on that. And I've seen everyone in all different shapes and sizes.
No, that makes sense. And I think that for like the advice that I would give somebody when you're thinking about investing in your business, because it is an investment, there is an ROI, but only if you put in the work. So I always tell people, like, if you're not being consistent with the things that you're doing right now, you're not going to be consistent with like something pretty or something more expensive on the other side. It's
Mhm.
like have the discipline within yourself first and then spend the money on it. Like prove to yourself that you can be consistent, that you can show up, like all of those things, and then go forward. Or sometimes once people pay too, they are a little bit more committed to the idea.
It's true. And I mean, I like that you said that because I mean, we can do our job, but it's ultimately the business owner's job to
Yeah.
carry it further. So it's whether if they hire the person to do the marketing or the social media management, they have to continue it, because I mean, I can do my job, but ultimately it's in their hands now. So if it's successful or not, it depends on how consistent they are and if they actually put in the work for it.
Yeah, it's true. And so like I think this like kind of can be a personality thing, but for me, when I work with clients and we work on like a marketing plan for them to implement all of these like ideas and these strategies, I get disappointed as like an entrepreneur not seeing them implement those things. And does that happen to you in your case?
Yes, it does,
Yeah.
definitely. And like, especially like now we're being a lot more selective with who we work with, and we need to
Mhm.
make sure like, are they actually in it? Because it's so disheartening to see,
Yeah.
we put in our all this work and then they don't do anything with it, or it never launches. And it's just like, we believed in you. We really wanted
Yeah.
you to do this. And like, honestly, I put my heart and soul into my work, and like,
Mhm.
I will never deliver something that I don't think is like 110%. And then I put all this effort into it, and then it's so sad to see that it never comes to be. So that has also been a process within my business, is making sure, being a little bit more selective with who we work with, and not
Mhm.
being, are they invested?
Yeah, no, and I think like as you grow in your business, that actually becomes a really real thing when you love what you do and when you're working with people. It's like you start to raise the bar on like who has access to your work and who has access to like your services, because I think that when you're creative, it's not just an exchange of like money for this product or money for this thing. It
Mhm.
is like, this is my time and energy and I care about it. And so I want you to like steward what I give you well, even though, yes, you paid for it. Yes, it's yours. You can do with it what you wish. But it's like working with those people where you can see that grow and flourish into something is something that's so rewarding at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely. Like, it's honestly really hard to actually see who's going to be like that. But
Yeah.
having these certain red flags at the beginning, you can tell.
Yeah, it's really true. So building a brand, what are the things that you look for that to you is like puts a brand like ahead of its field?
For me personally,
Mhm.
seeing that they actually thought about the little details. So even for me as a consumer, I really do my research into like, did they put an effort into their own branding? Like, do they have a website that is on point with their social media? If they have TikTok, is it consistent visually? Is their story consistent? And also if they have a product, making sure that the little details count. So that unboxing experience, do they really put the effort into their own products? It's not just something that's been mass produced and shipped into this craft box. There's no personality to it. There's no branding to it. Like, I'm not about that. I really like supporting brands that actually have put the effort and thought about the little things and are consistent with their visual identity and with their messaging, and kind of have more of a wholesome kind of brand identity, more as like, they're not just in it to make money. They actually have a purpose that is a little bit more fulfilling and a way to better the earth.
Actually, I really love that. And I think that that's something that's so important too. And the fact that you said like better the earth, like that is so true, but it's real. And I think especially too, I think what you talking about like the little details, the packaging, like even thinking about unboxing, it's true because it's all a part of this experience and a feel that is connected to the brand. What are some of your favorite brands right now?
Well, I have to say one of my favorite brands is something that I actually worked on. It's a clothing brand from Luxembourg called
Oh,
Aurore Being. And then there's also another clothing brand from Bali, and I actually found it when I was living there, called Rimba, and they do the most beautiful natural dyes. And like, I see her social media every day and I have to watch it because she shows the process of actually like picking the plants that she uses to dye, how she does
wow.
the dyeing work, and like the fabrics that she makes from it. And like, I bought quite a few pieces from her because I just think it's so beautiful, and like her story, and like she's someone that's actually consistent with the whole identity through and through. And I just find it so beautiful. So these kinds of brands are something that I look for and I live for.
I love that. And so your brand, like Moon Studio online, it's very beautiful. It feels very like light when I'm looking at it. Like it's easy to look at all of those things. It's beautiful, obviously, but you're not in it. Like you really just are like, who is like the behind the scenes of this brand on here? And so tell me how you've built out this brand without having any personal details at the forefront and building trust with an audience so that they trust you to pay them.
Yeah, so that's something that I always was adamant about, is making sure that like I'm not the face of the brand. I really wanted my work to speak for itself and for it to attract those people that are attracted to those kinds of visuals, because ultimately it's my style and it's something that I thrive in. Of course, I've tried to do other styles, but I quite prefer something that's a little bit more luxurious, a little bit more emotive, and just letting the visuals speak for themselves. And then also having the right messaging. So always having the right captions for the visuals and making sure it actually says something. It's not just a pretty face. There's actually something there, and it goes a little bit deeper. And also having the right stories on social media. Like social media has played a huge role in my business and getting clients. And then having a website also has gained a lot of credibility as well, because I can actually show my work and actually show this is what I can do. So actually having a website personally has been also really important to gaining that trust from the clients. And then actually jumping on a call with someone before even signing them is also something, to have that credibility, have that FaceTime with them to actually get to know them, for them to get to know me, is also something that helps a lot.
Actually, I really love that. I didn't know you do like an intro call. What does that process look like?
So we have a form on our website. So we have basic questions for someone to actually write through, and like that's also a process. So if someone doesn't want to take the time to write the
True.
information on the form, that's a red flag. So it's like, okay, they don't want to take the time to write it, then they're not going to take the time to have a call with us. So then once we review their answers and we feel like it's a brand that we align with, then we would send a scheduler, and we would set a time with them and just have like a 30-minute meeting. Sometimes it lasts 1 hour because there's a lot to talk about, and they're very interested or they have a lot of questions, and we just go through what's their main idea, what's the purpose behind this business, and just seeing ways that we can help them. And every offering has been different. We tailor it to exactly what they need, but
Oh,
ultimately
wow.
they'll always have a brand strategy and a visual identity as the basics, because that's what I feel every brand needs, whether it be a personal brand or, again, its own entity kind of brand. It needs to start with a strong foundation, which is the brand strategy, and then build a visual identity that's built off of that strategy to make sure everything is consistent.
Wow. That's so interesting. And so, like, right away as a business owner, I think about, okay, so if you're scheduling these calls, that's your time that you're giving away for free.
That's it.
And so what does the close rate look on that? So somebody books a meeting, they fill out the form, you book them a meeting, you have that meeting, you spend 30 to an hour of your time. And like, is it 80 to 90% and you're closing them as a client, or what does that look like?
I wouldn't say it's that high. Sometimes
Okay.
sometimes it is that high. But more like 50-50. So it's kind of
Oh,
like an investment in my time to see, is it worth it, or if they like it. But then ultimately when I send them the proposal, it's up to them, because
yeah.
I can list the different offerings that we can offer. And sometimes it is the investment money-wise that is the hindering kind of pulling
Yeah.
the trigger
Yeah.
decision. So I know our studio kind of can be considered to be a little bit more costly, more of an investment, and some people just aren't ready for that. And
Yeah.
it's not that they're not invested in it; they just simply aren't ready for that money investment side.
That makes sense. And so when you're sending out those proposals and people are like, maybe not now, do you find a lot of them coming back later?
Yeah, actually, that does happen. And I'm even working with a client right now where we had a beautiful call. She wanted to go through with it, but she just wasn't ready for that time. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I have another client that's like that. They reach out a couple of months in advance. We have a call, and they're just needing to sit on it for a while, and then they always come back. And even with our process, we send little reminder emails or just like, hey, how's it going? And I think that also helps a lot, is making sure that, whoever you talk to knows that you're serious and that you care, because a lot of people just do these kinds of things just to turn out some money. And
Yeah.
that's something that we notice in our industry, is like people doing these like intensive days. Like, I don't know how someone can build a brand in one day or even 1 week. That is I'm telling you, it's something that's come in this industry, and we're just like, I don't know who can do that and what quality it is like. And that's how it is, but that's not how we do things. We make sure that everything has the right time, and whenever the person's ready for it too. There's always time. We're never in any rush for anything.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that too, like you're getting what you pay for. If somebody says that they can turn around a full
right?
brand in a day, I'm like, that would be a red flag for me as a customer, like a consumer on that side. If somebody said that they could pump that out to me in that short of a time, I'm like, did you even take time to digest like what I said or the conversation or what my brand is about?
No.
Like that would just be too much. And so like for the freelancers listening, when you're like you have all of these back end processes, what are you using for like the reminders and like all that kind of stuff? What systems do you use?
Well, we use Flowdesk for our emails. We love that.
Same.
And also Dubsado.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
Oh, yeah, it's our like go-to. It's where all our forms are, where we get inquiries from, where we can send emails, and it just keeps everything streamlined. But when it comes to actually working with projects, we use Asana for project management. And I love it. I cannot imagine doing a project without Asana. It's like it's perfectly like scheduled. I know exactly what phase we're on. I can see when there's a comment, so you can add attachments. It's also something that we live by, is Asana too.
I love that. And I think that there is so much information out there. Like sometimes that's why I personally I love buying courses like from people in the industry who I trust, because I'm like, I just want to like tell me what systems you're using so that like I can just apply the same, because there's so much information out there. It's like, where do you start sometimes? And so I love Asana too. I think it's like really, really great. I personally don't use it right now. I used to before, but that's so interesting. And then for my like other things, I use HoneyBook a lot of the time.
I wanted to use HoneyBook, but you have to be American.
Oh yeah. Well, and I'm not American, but I still use HoneyBook. Yeah. And I've really found that it's really great. And I've been a consumer from someone and had the experience on that end using HoneyBook too. And I really liked that whole process, and then using it as a business owner, it was really great. But I think
that's actually how I was introduced to it too, because initially when we got our website, we hired someone to do it for us, and she used the HoneyBook, and we were just like, what is that? Like, can we find out? And like, we were sad that you have to be American or be in America to use it, so we had to find an alternative. But yeah, I think HoneyBook is also a really great tool.
Yeah, it's really great. And so like to the freelancers listening, what is like a piece of advice you would give somebody who's feeling like how you felt like when you were in the pandemic and you were like, what am I going to do to make money? How can I turn this into a business? What would you tell like the girl that who you once were?
Honestly, I would say like don't feel so much pressure, because that's something that I feel like I overstress, and I put so much pressure on myself, and like some things just don't work exactly how you are intending them to be, or that time frame, and just being a little bit more generous or thoughtful towards yourself, because I feel like as a woman or even as a man, I feel like we have so much pressure to do and feel and be a certain way. And I just feel like being patient and not putting that pressure on yourself is really important, especially when you're trying to do something new, because you'll never know all the right answers right away. Even if you feel like you do or you want to, it takes time. And even years after starting this, I'm still learning and just not putting so much pressure that I did when I first started.
That's actually such good advice. And I really do feel like the more you grow in your business, the more you know, the less you know. Like, the more you realize that you're, like, learning and growing in an industry, you're like, "Wow, actually, like, I could spend my whole life just learning," and so sometimes you just have to it's like baby step it and start somewhere, start with one thing, and so did you guys start with one product offering and expand that? What did that look like?
Um, as far as our business goes,
Yeah.
yeah, we just started with one service, which was just branding. And then slowly building our skill level. And then I started offering product design, package design. And then I started offering Instagram templates and styling. And then from there, websites. So
Oh,
slowly,
wow.
slowly, just learning new skills that will benefit our clients in the end. Because that's something that we've noticed is that we find a client and they kind of just want everything done in one place rather than finding all these different people to do certain things. And like,
Yeah.
quite honestly, I feel like it's not good to be spreading yourself too thin and like learning all these different things. But I think like especially in this industry, it's really important to have knowledge on all these things because all of it is interconnected. Like you once you have a brand, it has to reflect your Instagram, it has to reflect your website, it has to reflect your marketing. All these things are interconnected. So having this knowledge on how everything works when you do have a brand or a business, it's really important. So the fact of having this like jack of all trades, master of none doesn't really apply here. I think it's
Yeah.
really important to actually be knowledgeable on everything because you're not going to do it right if you don't know how it's going to be marketed or how it's going to be on the website. It all kind of works together.
That's really true, and I feel like even how you guys have like, you have complementary skills in your business, I feel like that probably helps you to be able to specialize, but still achieve that goal with your clients and being like, "Okay, you can get all of these things, like the visual identity, the branding strategy all in one place," but it's like you and your husband working on those things and making sure that you're accomplishing the goal for the client.
Yeah, definitely. I think that helps us and differentiates us between other studios because a lot of them are just one person and they have to take care of all of it. And I know it's really stressful and time consuming. So the fact that we can delegate certain things and he can take care of one section and I can take care of another and like actually specialize in those things. So he's more of the brand strategist specialist and I'm the visual identity specialist. So anything that's visual, I take care of.
I love that. I love that. And one question that I always love to ask my guests is this podcast is about like taking away the question of how she does it and really like revealing from behind the curtain of how you accomplish your goal, which is balancing your business and your personal life. So if you could think of one word that you embody to
One
to
word.
accom
Okay.
yeah, to accomplish that goal or a couple, you could do a sentence or something like that. What word comes to mind when you think about balancing your work and your personal life?
I think the word that comes to mind, I have a similar question when I'm on calls with clients. I think it would be patience. I think having
Oh,
patience plays a really big role in my life and my work. So making sure just just take everything a little bit easier, be patient. Don't be so stressed day to day, whether it be business or life. Just be patient.
I love that. And I think that that's something that's so important, especially like as a parent. I'm like, yeah, I need to harness my patience. And it's just like making sure that you keep that at the forefront in order to be able to balance all of those hats and all of the roles that you play day to day, especially like the ebbs and flows of business, the ebbs and flows of life. You guys have a really busy life and you're moving and you're building your business and all of those things. So I love that. And on where can our listeners find you online?
Well, we have Instagram, so it's at Moon Studio Designs, and also our website, which is also moonstudiodesigns.com. And we're working our way on TikTok, but we aren't quite there yet.
It's a lot. The videos are a lot to accomplish and just like keep
It's
going.
a lot, and the fact that like I'm not a face person of the brand, it's also a little bit more complex. So if I have to take the time to actually make the content for that's just not me.
Yeah, yeah, no, and yeah, faceless content is like a whole different thing. Like when it comes to video, it's a lot easier to achieve with like the still images and all that kind of stuff, but it can be done. And with like the brand that you've created already, I have no doubt that it's going to be beautiful and seamlessly integrated. But thank you so much, Monika, for spending the time with us today, talking to the listeners about freelancing, branding, what's important, all the things. I know that everybody found it really, really helpful. At least I did. And thank you so much for coming on How She Does It.
Thank you so much. And I loved all your questions. So thank you for having me.
Oh, of course.